Hey everyone, it's Nurse Dani, and I have been so excited about today's live stream. I have Kristin Hodson with me today. She is a certified sex therapist and also the founder of the Healing Group. And if you want to know more about her, be sure to check out thehealinggroup.com. Mm-hmm. You are an amazing woman, and we are so lucky to have you with us today. Tell everyone a little bit more about yourself.
So I'm a therapist. I've been practicing for 12 years, and I founded the Healing Group because I couldn't find services that I needed as a therapist. And we started out with maternal mental health, and then what we quickly learned is oh, people are having sex most often or having some experience with sex to have babies. And there were very few resources in the community to do that. So then we've added that, and that's become one of our specializations.
I think that is awesome because this is the topic that everyone wants to know more about, but no one wants to ask about.
Yes, absolutely.
And so while we're talking today, you guys can actually ask some questions, and we may have some time to get to a few of those at the end. But, let's just dive right in because it's a topic that a lot of people they're afraid to ask about. This was actually, let me start here. This was all prompted by an OBGYN that we both worked with in the past who contacted us and said, hey, will you get some information out there? Because every day I have women in my office talking to me about sex. And you need to learn more about it, especially about female anatomy in order to enjoy it and to maximize it.
Yes.
And so maybe we'll just start with a few questions that she suggested that a lot of people are in her office asking.
Perfect.
Okay.
Perfect.
So first of all, she said women assume they should climax when the penis is in the vagina, like in the movies. Is that true?
No, it's not true. Not true. Because one of the things with the movies is it's designed for TV. It's designed to create the moment and to create viewership. And that's not how the female body is designed, because what they're missing out on is the clitoris. The clitoris is where all the nerve endings are. So this is the fact I think is fascinating, that the penis has 4,000 nerve endings, pretty sensitive, the head, and the clitoris has 8,000 nerve endings.
Wow.
So that is where women are experiencing majority of their pleasure. And that's on the vulva. So knowing that that's on the vulva, it's not on the inside, it's on the outside. Knowing that that's how you're experiencing pleasure matters, because when we think about the sensitivity of the vagina, I oftentimes have women stick their tongue on the inside of their cheek. It's not highly sensitive.
Right.
Like, it's sensitive enough, but I think that's a wonderful thing, because if our vagina was super sensitive, childbirth would be pretty unbearable.
Worse, right? Even worse than it already is.
So knowing about the anatomy and knowing about the clitoris and how you personally experience pleasure and the type of touch and the pressure all makes a difference. And the movies aren't going to show you that.
Right. And both men and women should understand that.
Yep.
Men and women.
Yes.
So I was a labor and delivery nurse for 11 years, and I was shocked at all the things that people didn't know. And one time I was teaching a prenatal class and just going through basic anatomy that would be helpful for childbirth. And one of the brave dads, I had to give him an A for being honest. But he raised his hand and he was like, I just learned there's 3 holes. And I'm like,
right.
You did not go to that sex ed class in high school or whatever, So how long has that couple been married? I mean, I don't think that that's an uncommon thing, and women may not even know. In preparation for this, I talked to a lot of different friends, and I said, okay, I'm doing this live stream with a sex therapist. If you had, 5 or 10 minutes with a sex therapist, what would you want to know? And almost every single one of them, I've been married for 17 years. Most of them have been married for 15 to 20. They were all like, well, we never had an orgasm for I never had an orgasm for 10 years, the first 10 years of our marriage. And so I realized that is not an uncommon thing too.
It's not.
And if you don't know about the clitoris and how your body works, you won't know that.
Because the number one question I get is this normal? Am I normal? People want to know that they're normal. And I will say that a lot of people not knowing about their bodies or the anatomy of a female body, that's normal to not know, because most of us aren't getting education. Most of us, maybe if we're lucky, had one maturation class. May have been super awkward.
That was in 5th
but we got
grade.
it.
All I remember is how awkward it felt.
It felt awkward. And then we may have had a health class, depending on the teacher. So for you to not know this information, it's okay, and it's never too late to learn, and knowledge is power. And so getting that information, many women will not orgasm because, again, they don't know their body, and their partners don't know their body, and they're hoping their partner will know more about their body than they do and can teach them about it. And if you've never even looked at your own body, if you've never looked at your genitals, you don't know. If you've only seen your genitals in the mirror when you're delivering, take a chance to get to know your genitals. not when you're delivering, and get familiar with them. It's your body, and if you can start to embrace that, then you have the opportunity to increase your pleasure.
You know, this is easy for you and I to say because you're a sex therapist and I'm a labor and delivery nurse. For some people out there, they may be like, what? And they may have set up walls for themselves or been taught differently. How can you break down those barriers?
A lot of it, honestly, is practice. It's a skill. I view it as a skill set. It's not a magical download. Like, I look at how easy you and I talk about it, but it wasn't always this way for me. I didn't just become a sex therapist because it was easy and natural. I had to grow into it. Like, I didn't learn the word vulva until my early 20s. And then even when I heard it, I'm like, a what-a? Like, what is that?
Yeah.
And to say it, or to say the word penis, it has been practiced and practiced and practiced. And so for those that feel barriers, you can choose to lean into it. I like to say, allow discomfort for growth. Because any new skill is going to feel a little awkward. We're going to feel a little like out into new territory. Learning about sex, talking about it, learning the words is no different. Like, lean into new territory and be like, I'm not supposed to know this. I'm not supposed to be a pro at talking about it, but I can develop it. And I can't tell you how many women and men that I've talked to that as they start doing that, they're like, oh, this has gotten easier than I thought. This is more doable. This isn't as hard as what it once felt like. So think of any other skill you developed, cooking, riding a bike, all of those, you had to start somewhere.
That's right, yeah.
You just start somewhere.
Yeah, you don't know everything in the beginning. And I think that's part of the fun is like you can discover it with your partner together.
Absolutely.
Right? That's part of the fun. Mm-hmm. Okay, so the next question is often the first time women have sex, it's a letdown. It's not what they expect. How do they move on from a bad experience?
Yes, and I'm going to say, again, because we don't have sex education and we're not talking about what it really is going to be like, we're most often getting our education from the movies. So I like to think about how a lot of women have seen the movie The Notebook and what they think is maybe they're going to have, like, it's going to be so passionate that their hand's going to go up on the glass. And they're like, that's not how it is. Because when you think about, okay, I'm trying to learn about my body, you're have your body, and then we have to figure out our bodies together. We have to figure out how they all work. Mm-hmm. The first time is going to, if our expectations are here and we have this romantic, it's just going to work
like the movies,
because the passion is going to make it work. Yeah. That is a letdown. Mm-hmm. However, that doesn't have to be where we stay, where it's like, that was really disappointing. We can get over an experience like that. Like, I was talking with you earlier about, okay, maybe your first time driving was a really bad experience. How did you get over that?
You practice.
You talk about it, you journal, you express, like, that was really disappointing. Mm-hmm. What I thought was going to be this, and this is what I got. And if we're trying to talk about it with our partner, if it involved them and it created some emotional resentment, to say, hey, I realize I've just been kind of holding on to this. I'm wondering if we can talk about it because I want to feel closer to you. I want to feel connected. And I want to let this go. And so it doesn't have to be a forever thing. It's just something, though, that we have to choose to say, that first experience, I actually was maybe misinformed. That maybe it wasn't just a bad experience, but maybe my expectations were off because I didn't know any different. I had no idea that this wouldn't be reality.
Yeah. And so sometimes it's easy to put sex in a different compartment and to separate ourselves. Like, we have our whole life over here and then our sex life over here. But that may create part of the problem and make it hard to learn and to grow together and to enjoy it because you're compartmentalizing it, because it should be like intertwined with the rest of your life with your partner, right?
Right. That if our sex life is something we do, meaning we only are having sex on Friday night after our date, and then our sex and our connection and our intimacy is non-existent until the next Friday, we want to try to weave it and integrate it like everything else in our life so that it's not this separate compartmentalized thing, because then that just enhances, like, a sexual relationship and the energy that exists between a relationship can happen all the time. And that's what can then make, when we actually do have sex, better, because our relationship's better, our connection is better, our overall emotional intimacy is better, which is really relevant for women that are pregnant or in the postpartum period, to feel emotionally connected and valued by their spouse and supported, which helps make sex better too.
Right.
Yeah.
I've heard you talk about Choreplay and Foreplay before. Explain that to everyone who doesn't understand that, because I think this is what, can make or break it for a lot of people.
So one of the things that is hugely important after the postpartum period, even the pregnant period, even, we'll just talk about, like, if you're parenting, like raising kids.
Sex before you have kids and sex after is different.
It's different. It's different, and you're having kids for a long part of your relationship once you choose to have them. So Choreplay is where you increase your partnership, so it's not like one person is doing everything around the house. What often happens is we start to feel resentment and like, don't touch me, I've got so much to do, and no, I can't connect with you because I've got to think about tomorrow because my day starts at 6 and maybe I'm having to wake up at 2 and at 4 and no. And I like this because there's actual study that if the partnership gets better, then sex lives can be better. So Choreplay.
That makes perfect sense.
It does.
Right?
It absolutely does. Choreplay is where you're going, okay, what needs to be done in our house? Like, what are all the things and how do we want to divide this up so we both feel like we're supporting each other in our new roles as parents and we're both feeling valued and respected and seen. So Choreplay is that. It's the partnering, and it can make a big difference in desire. And then this is my favorite, is foreplay. We think about foreplay as everything that's happening right before sex. Like, that's what we've all been taught, is right before you have sex, you need to have the right touching, you need to kiss, you need to nibble, you need to like flirt. And that's core play. That just makes for good sex. But foreplay is everything happening in between sexual experiences. So if you're not having a chance to connect at all throughout the week, you're not having a conversation beyond the kids, you're only coordinating logistics, you're just high-fiving as you're passing through, then it's going to be really hard to open yourself up or have desire for sex. And so reframing foreplay is all of our emotional, physical, and mental investments into each other and our relationship in between sexual experiences. It bridges the gap from like, I'm totally turned off to not thinking about sex to suddenly I need to be turned on. Yes. Because you're connecting throughout the week. The actual act itself is just an extension of what's already
been going
doing.
On.
Yes, yeah. But in the postpartum period, you said something earlier that sex before kids and after is going to be different. I like to help parents know that you don't just go back to how you were. Like, the expectation isn't to get back. Sex isn't going to be that way. It's going to change over our whole lifespan. Before we, like when we were dating, before we had kids, when we got married, and then we're going to age and we're going to have medical, it's going to change over our whole life. And so developing the skill of flexibility and adaptability around our sex life is really important. And kids provides a natural opportunity to develop that skill. And so for some moms, if they're like, I don't feel any desire, I'm breastfeeding, my baby is waking up 5 times throughout the night, why don't I want to do sex? Well, that makes a lot of sense.
It does.
Be patient with yourself. Be patient and allow new opportunities, like to redefine sex, that maybe it's not intercourse, but maybe you guys are coming up with other creative ways to physically connect.
Like, what about that 6-week period in between having the baby,
Yes.
So from a medical perspective, I tell people all the time, that 6-week rule exists for a reason. It's not like, on 6 weeks and 0 days, that's, when you
Right.
have to, wait until that date. Or you can, some people are given the green light by the doctor but aren't ready yet. So it's not like it has to happen at that time, but there are reasons to wait to actually have intercourse because the cervix needs to close, you're prone to infection, the stitches need to heal. But I love how you said that you can look for other ways to connect, because often, that's an overwhelming, yet so it's a very joyful time in life too when you have a new baby and you want to still connect.
Yes.
So you got to find ways to do that.
And that's the thing, is some people will be like, okay, nothing for 6 weeks, but I can tell you that for some people, having a really sensual head massage, like, do you remember just being so tired and being maybe we're not going to have intercourse, but can I give and engage and like receive a really like the best head massage? Absolutely. Or what if we lay and just rub each other's feet? Or there's all these ways, because what can happen is we have a new baby and suddenly we're totally disconnected, and our partner can feel like they're on an island. And then that 6-week appointment, we're hanging everything on it.
That, yeah.
And we may not be ready, but we can view the re-entry into our sexual life as an emergence and a process and something we're growing back into, instead of being like, all right, it's go time, green light, we can do this.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be so abrupt. We can transition. And I know that as a mom, when we have babies all hanging all over us and kids asking and demanding a lot, it's hard to want to give ourselves in that way. And that's
you
where
kind of want to put up a wall and have your own space.
Absolutely. But if you find this rhythm and it doesn't become a chore, but a place for you guys to connect and you're replenishing each other, then you can start to feel connected and have sex.
I love that, replenishing each other.
Yeah.
That's so good. Okay, so another thing that comes along with, like especially the postpartum period or as women get closer to menopause is vaginal dryness, because hormones affect all of that. And that can also affect a couple's sex life, or she might think something's wrong with her, she's broken. Talk more about that.
Vaginal dryness is a biggie, and it can happen during pregnancy and postpartum period. That can be really common because of the fluctuation of hormones. And then it, like you say, the perimenopausal period, that can be happening. And that can bring a ton of discomfort when you're having sex. And when it comes to lubrication, and I think this piece is so important, that not all lubes are created equal. There's a lot of really bad lube out there that's not good for your sexual health. It's not FDA regulated. So you want to find the lubes that are on a good list. And I've written up, if you actually go to my Instagram, I've done a whole thing on good lube, because it can make a big difference. Some women who are having sex without lubrication or feeling like they should naturally lubricate, like if I'm turned on, I should naturally lubricate, that's a total myth. Lubrication has nothing to do with desire or if you're turned on. It just is body function.
That may be really important for some people to hear out there.
Yes, anyone that's hearing that, I'll say it again. Lubrication has nothing to do with turned on or not. And so utilizing lubrication as a tool in your sexual relationship can be one of the single most important things you can do for your pleasure. And so I recommend definitely investing into that.
Okay, and as it pertains to like trying to have a baby, the type of lube that you choose can be important, because there are some lubricants actually kill sperm.
Some actually kill sperm.
Yeah.
Like I think it's funny because they explode. Because you have this thing called osmolality. Because if you're dealing with water-based lubes, we're dealing with pH and water pressure in our vagina as well. And so you can have some lubes that are exploding sperm and others that are taking off the first layer of the vaginal wall. Not good things.
No.
And so, like, if we think about heating and cooling lubrications that you can get over the counter, that's like they're putting mentholatum like you're putting in you don't want that in your vagina.
Right.
And you don't want flavored lubes in your vagina, because that's going to potentially create yeast infections and things like that. So if you're trying to have a baby, find fertility-friendly lubrication so that it supports conception instead of
making it even harder. There's enough factors that can go into infertility. That's definitely one you can eliminate and not have to worry about.
Absolutely.
Oh, so what about sex when a couple is struggling with infertility?
Yeah, and that one...
That's a game changer for a lot of couples.
It's a game changer, and I empathize a lot with people that are trying to juggle and navigate those two things, because you want to get pregnant, and so sex becomes all about that window when you can conceive, and there can be a lot of pressure, and you can lose a lot of the pleasure, because it's like, okay, it's go time. It takes the fun out, and it becomes a job, and so trying to create, again, that connection as an ongoing thing. Intimacy is the physical, emotional, spiritual, mental connection. So creating more of those times when you're connecting, creating intentional dates. I also say have fun with spontaneous and or planned sex dates where it's not about conception, because that can be the work, that can be the effort. But I also
do it at other times in your cycle.
Do it at other times, absolutely. Yeah. And again, this isn't, every couple's going to be different, and they're going to have to figure that out, because it does come with a lot of emotional challenge. But it really is balancing out, okay, this is our window, and our relationship at the core of things is what is making all this happen in the first place. So how do we invest into the relational piece that's not this what feels like work piece?
Yeah. Oh, that's so important for so many couples out there struggling with it.
Yeah.
We've gotten a few questions while we've been talking.
I love it. Good.
Okay, so Joanna says, what is the best way to navigate the difference between partners when we... Sorry, who wrote this? When one has a crazy fast accelerator and the other has a super sensitive brake. Oh, that's a great way of putting it.
Do you know what I love about this question? Whoever wrote this, I love this question because they're drawing on the latest science about sexual desire. There's a book called Come As You Are by Emily Nagoski that's talking all about accelerator, which is where we get turned on really easy, and our brakes, where we're more sensitive to being turned off and closing down. So whoever wrote that, good job. And if you haven't gotten that book, get the book because it's good. So navigating, is it okay if I talk a little bit and deconstruct desire?
Yeah,
okay,
yeah, please.
So we have, again, this belief that desire just kind of falls out of the sky. It's spontaneous. We're walking down the street and we're like, I could go for some sex. We're in the shower. It's like, I could go for some sex. That's not the way a lot of women experience desire. They experience it where all of a sudden they open themselves up and they start kissing. Like, desire isn't proceeding where they're like, yeah, I can do this right now. It's like, sure, I'm open to it because you're kissing. And then they start to get aroused and they're like, oh yeah, no, I'm actually liking this. And then the more they get turned on, then desire starts to follow where they're like, yes, I definitely want to be doing this right now. But that's called responsive desire, to where we're responding as our body's getting aroused or we're responding to an initiation. And a lot of people can feel like they're broken or feel like their partner has low desire when all that's really going on is they're responding. They have different response cycles. So,
and you're more prone to being open to it if you're doing this foreplay thing too. So that's really important for men to understand, I think.
It's really important. Because if you think about it, like if we go like 0 to 100 and 100 is, yes, I want to be doing this. And if you're starting a sexual experience at ground zero, you haven't invested into the relationship at all, it's going to be harder to get from 0 to 100. But if you're investing regularly, you're connecting, or you're also saying, how do I open myself up to a sexual experience? Or how do I open myself up to an initiation? And we get ourselves up to a 30 or a 40, it's easier to bridge that gap. Yeah. So in terms of this, I would say understanding your desire styles, understanding what your breaks are, and if you haven't communicated what your breaks are, having a conversation about that, because they may be really solvable. But if you're not sure how to have that conversation, message me because I can help you. I call it practice safe sex conversations so you don't get into fights, because there's a way to talk about it. But
these can be super sensitive topics for couples. If you're bringing up something that you like or don't like, that can be really awkward.
It can be awkward again because we're not practiced at it. We're not taught. It's just kind of like, go start having sex once you're married and good luck with that.
Yeah.
But we can learn to talk about it, but learning how so that your partner's receptive to where they're like, I want to connect with you, so I want to share all the things that I'm loving, and here's a few things that I've learned that turn me off.
Do you think it's better to do it in the moment or at a different time?
Nope, that's a great question. I think in the moment stuff could be, I want more of this. I love how you're touching me. The positive stuff, because who doesn't love that positive?
It's going to continue to drive it, yeah.
And really, we both, like when you're with your partner, you both want to please each other. And so getting that positive feedback actually helps the sexual experience. No one wants to be like, is this working for you? Like, how's this going? It's not the time to be like, you know what, actually, here's what I don't like. That was actually a really terrible experience. That's going to be harder. If your ultimate goal is to improve your sex life, if your ultimate goal is to connect and to increase pleasure, then you want to time that. Maybe not right after work. If both of you have just come home or you've had a long day, maybe that's not the time. But to say, I want to connect with you and I would love to learn how to start having conversations about sex. It's something that you and I haven't really practiced. I'd like to. Is that something you'd be open to? Sure. And then together you figure out when the best time would be, and then to make it time limited. I think there's nothing worse than to go into an open-ended conversation like that, and you're like, is this going to be 2 hours where we're just going to go into the history? If you know when it kind of begins and ends, that feels more approachable. And again, you're practicing it. You're being like, we're not supposed to be good at this. We're just trying because this is our ultimate goal.
And I like how one of the best pieces of advice we got before we got married, someone told us once, whenever there's anything you want to discuss that may be confrontational, ask your partner's permission to discuss it and see when they want to do it.
Yep.
And so I love how you said that because, a lot of times they'll be like, I have something to say that you're not going to want to hear, whatever it pertains to. It may not be sex, but something else. So is there a time when we can talk about that? Tell me when you feel like you can handle a conversation when you're going to hear something I don't want to say, that you don't want to hear me say to you.
Yes. Because it's one of those things that if I send a text and I'm like, we need to talk, ...
Oh yeah,
that's going to create the anxiety, and you're like, I don't want to talk, or I want to talk right now, and that it may not be the best time. And so I really encourage couples to get clear on their goal. Like, what's the point of this conversation, so you stay on track?
And you can both have some forethought about what you're going to say.
Yes, too. And if you get derailed, it's like, okay, let's pause the conversation. Because we want to keep building positive experiences, so let's just pause and we'll revisit this. That's totally okay to do. You don't have to just stick it through. Like, don't stick it through. Just revisit it.
May not resolve it during that conversation. I love keeping it timed.
Yep.
Yeah, that's really good.
It kind of gives the rules for engagement of how can we make this a positive experience.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, so I think a great place to end this would be this question. I love this. What are some things that women have in common when they have a happy sex life?
That's good. Things that people have in common would be understanding their body, feeling confident or feeling a sense of confidence, feeling supported in their relationship, feeling respected and respecting their partner, and self-esteem. Those, because so often our sex life is dependent on how we feel comfortable to show up in that experience. It's not necessarily, our partners can be really loving and adoring of us, but if we don't accept it, like, that compliment where you're like, oh, you look so pretty. Like, no, I don't. No, I don't. They could be making us feel really comfortable, but if we don't feel comfortable in our own bodies, if we are having issues, then we're not going to show up in that way that we can just fully engage in a sexual experience. So those would be the things I think women have in common that make for a good sex life. Also, and I'm going to put this here, you're going to have women that have been sexually abused. And we don't need to go into it, but I want to make mention of it so that if you have a history of trauma or any kind of abuse, that can be a factor that's worth resolving, because that can impact. And so I just want to name that to say that can come in, or relationship distress, resolving those things make a big difference on your sex life.
And counseling for individuals and couples who have a history of these issues can help break down those barriers, and there's hope that they can have a happy, healthy sexual relationship.
Absolutely. This doesn't, and reaching out for that help isn't an indication that you're weak or there's something wrong.
Absolutely.
It means you're worthy of that support and you're wanting to make things better.
Yeah. Well, I so appreciate you coming and spending time with us today.
Thanks for having me. That was so fun.
I know, it's been so fun.
Yes.
And thank you, everyone, for being engaged and asking questions. I'm sure that you all enjoyed it, too. Again, Kristin, tell everyone where they can hear more about you.
Yes. So you can go to thehealinggroup.com. We have that. We have our Instagram. And then I have a professional Instagram, just Kristin B. Hodson. It's just the @ at Instagram.
Awesome. And of course, you guys know where to find me if you have questions in the future. Intermountain Moms. Thanks so much for joining us, everyone, and have a great day.